I recently played through a full playthrough of Baldur's Gate 3 with a full party of wizards, and I learnt a lot about wizards and the spells and what spells I didn't like, what spells I did like, what were most effective, or at least in my case, and what were not effective at all, or not even worth using. And there was a whole bunch of spells I didn't even touch at all. From that playthrough, I also made this video where I talked about my top 10 spells, how I used them, and why I thought they were so good. However, that video has turned into a whole bunch of comments of people telling me that I'm wrong, or telling me that there's a lot of other spells that are better, or I didn't use, or they think are better, and so on and so forth. Now, don't get me wrong, there are plenty of spells that I thought were great, but I didn't rank them in my top 10 because I just didn't think they were as good as the ones in my top 10. So, because there's a whole lot of other spells in Baldur's Gate 3 that I didn't cover, like obviously there's more than 10 wizard spells, so I'm going to go ahead and rank them all based on my usage and how I think they go compared to all the other spells. So I have here a Baldur's Gate 3 wizard spells tier list maker that I found on Tier Maker, and we're going to go ahead and rank all of the wizard spells from D to S just to see how on par with the community my thinking is with the spells, and so you guys can tell me that I'm wrong in the comment section. And I'm serious, like, if I put a spell into D, it's generally because I probably haven't used the spell much. But if I put it into D and I'm not giving it enough attention, or if I'm not using it the right way or anything like that, let me know, because, you know, it's all about becoming better players. And, you know, I'll tell you guys how I use these other spells. So let's go through this process. Now, it's actually tiered it nicely here, so this is going to be the category of each of the spells. For D, it's going to be rarely useful or fluff. C is situational. B is great uses. A is extremely useful, and S overperforms. Now, generally speaking, I'm probably going to say S and A is like spells that you're probably always going to want to have. So if you're new to Baldur's Gate or playing with wizards, anything in S and A, you're probably going to want to have on your party. Anyway, let's get into it, shall we? Alright, so first up we have Acid Splash. Now, I never really lean too much into using acid or the acid effects. I generally not too fussed on it. It probably does have a usefulness if you're paying a lot of attention to it, but for me, I never really use it that much, and when I did use it, I just didn't really feel that like it affected too much. I don't remember it hitting very often either, but I mean, it doesn't really mean too much. So personally, I'm going to put Acid Splash as a D because I just didn't really use it much at all. Next up is Blade Ward. So this is another cantrip. Obviously, it does give additional protection to the caster. So being a cantrip, obviously it doesn't require a spell slot to cast. So obviously being a bit more defensive, it's great. It basically grants resistance to all incoming damaging types from bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing. Obviously good for mages, for wizards. Another one though, I never really used that much because, like, if you're having to cast this, you're wasting a turn in your combat where you could be dishing damage. Like, personally, I just like to be outputting as much damage as I can on the battlefield, especially like early game. A lot of the enemies are very weak, so you just want to be damaging them as quickly as possible, because if you're wasting a turn, they're going to hit you and do the equal amount of damage to you instead and kill you. And in later game, you just out damage everyone anyway in any class. So I never really had too much like reason to cast Blade Ward, so we'll put that down in the D. Now, next one is Chilling Touch. So Chilling Touch is another good, it's a good like damage cantrip. So if you're running like a Necromancer, it's something fun to play with. So Bone Chill is obviously a good one for doing damage. It's got pretty good range on it. Does 1d8 necrotic damage, and it prevents the person you hit with it to heal themselves on the next turn, which can come in handy. But overall, it's not a huge like go-to cantrip for me. I use it a lot for my Necromancer because it's a Necromancer spell, but it's not something I would always go for, so I'm just going to put that as a C. Okay, so next up, Dancing Lights. To be honest, I don't see the point in Dancing Lights at all. I don't know how Dancing Lights could be very useful in Baldur's Gate, if I'm honest, because, like, obviously darkness is an effect that it can affect your character, but, like, you can generally see everything that's happening on the battlefield. It's really when they're, affected by darkness that they don't, and you just get a disadvantage on the rolls. I generally just go for the roll anyway and just hope for the best. I've never used the spell, so I'm just going to use it as a D. Okay, so next up is Firebolt. So Firebolt, I think, is overall just a really good damage dealing spell to have. It's got a lot of use cases, set things on fire. Like, I notice when I don't have Firebolt on my character because I go to ignite something and I can't because I don't have Firebolt. So it's actually probably extremely useful as a cantrip because it's probably just you have to have it because the amount of things that you want to set on fire to explode and stuff like that, it's good to have on you because it's a cantrip and it does scale well as a cantrip. So if you have like a evocation wizard, they get extra damage from evocation from cantrips as well. So probably a good one to keep on your wizard because it's good. It scales up. Okay, so next up we've got Friends. Now Friends, I've never used it. Obviously, really only good for outside of combat. I don't know how you could use it in combat, or if you'd want to make use of it in combat. Obviously, it just basically increases your charisma checks and makes non-hostile. It just gives you an advantage on charisma checks. I mean, it's if you've got it on you, if you got it selected as an active spell and you're in a charisma situation, it's good. But as a wizards, since they're not charisma based characters anyway, you don't really want to be in charisma situations. So probably not one that you really want to have as a wizard. Probably helpful if your wizard has it and you're a bard and or a sorcerer. Could be useful as a buff for them, but not something I would keep in my kit because it just takes up spell slot. Okay, next up is Lights. Another one that I probably wouldn't use too much. I've never used and probably would never use. It's basically allows you to illuminate an object. I know there's a couple of items that it could affect, but another one I just don't see much use case for. Okay, so Mage Hand. So Mage Hand is actually quite useful in a few different sections. Probably put it as situational. So there's a few moments in the game where Mage Hand, actually I'll put it in B. I didn't use it this way, but I know a lot of people like to use Mage Hand as another attacker. So you can put down a whole bunch of items. You can make Mage Hand throw things at people. Obviously potions works as well. It's really good for doing your triggers. So if you're fighting the Grim, I use it to trigger the hammer and trigger the lava when I need to, so I don't need to have somebody else doing that. So really helpful in those situations. Really good for just reaching things at a long distance. So Mage Hand is great in a lot of different cases. Probably worth having on your wizard in most playthroughs. Okay, Invisibility. Invisibility, I never used it in my playthrough because wizards especially don't really have much need to be invisible. So obviously if you're invisible you get advantage on checks, but to be honest, wizards aren't the type of players to use invisibility to their advantage too much. So I will put it situational because there are certain situations where you would use it. Okay, next up, Poison Spray. Poison Spray is another one that I don't really like. I had it on a few of my characters in my wizard playthrough, and I just never got that much success out of it. Not when I could use just Firebolt at a distance. Never got anyone with a poison effect from it. It was kind of like a meh. It was always a meh every time I use it. You have to be up close and personal. Yeah, never really got that much out of it. Ray of Frost. So another great one, kind of akin to Firebolt. If you're running an ice build, obviously you have to have it, and it's a great one to go with. Decent damage all throughout the entire playthrough, and a really good one to have as a cantrip, as a last resort. There's obviously situations where there could be enemy could be wet. If they're wet, they take extra damage from ice, Ray of Frost. And you can do some pretty substantial damage from that. It also creates icy surfaces, so if there's water on the ground, creates that icy surface, and everyone will slip on that. Super, super useful. So yeah, definitely a for Ray of Frost. Shocking Grasp. So Shocking Grasp, another really good one. If they're wet, you do extra lightning damage. The only disadvantage is obviously they have to be close. Now, obviously that does happen a lot as a wizard. So I'll put that as a B because it is helpful. If they're armored, you get an advantage on that as well. Good damage output potentials, but yeah, the disadvantage is you have to be up close and personal. And if you have Warcaster, also really good to have because if they try to move out or you get an attack of opportunity, you can use Shocking Grasp. All right, last one here, True Strike. Another one I never really used too much at all. So the caster gains an advantage on their next attack roll against a target. So rather than trying to give yourself, like using a whole turn to give yourself an advantage on your next turn, I'd rather just have 2 attempts at the same attack anyway, and like there's a good chance you'll probably do damage on both hits anyway. So kind of feels like just a waste of a turn to use that on yourself. All right, Burning Hands. So this is our first level 1 spell. Now, Burning Hands is good early game. It falls off really hard late game. It is a cone attack of fire damage. The major disadvantage, obviously, is that it's a cone attack and they have to be pretty close to you. So not ideal, though, because it's early game that you get access to it. It does allow you to do a bit of damage, but because of the range problem, I'd probably put it as a B. Okay, next up is Blindness. Now, I never used Charm Person. So all of these kinds of spells I never really used because for me, I'm always about damage output. If I can use a turn to do damage and potentially kill a goblin, for example, especially early game, I'd rather do that than try and use Charm Person, where I have in most cases, you have like a 50 to 60% chance of it hitting. And if it misses, you've wasted a spell slot where you could have just done damage and potentially killed, or like half the health, and somebody else can finish it off on the next turn. So I just find doing these kinds of spells not ideal. Although, okay, so you can use it in combat. So it's better in dialogue, but still, I never really stress too much about that in dialogue either. Okay, Chromatic Orb. So I never used this in my wizard playthrough, but I can see how this could be useful. I'm going to put that in B for great uses, because it obviously does a bit of extra damage. The ice methods do have like their own version of Chromatic Orb, which was useful, so I'll put that as in a B. Color Spray. So another one where you give your debuff your enemy. I'd rather do damage. Even though you get the Color Spray ring, which gives you the free spell, I had it on my wizards, never used it because I just never thought about it. Like I said, I'd just rather do damage. Man, there's a lot. There's a lot that's falling into D. Disguise Self. I don't... Like, maybe if you're playing like a rogue playthrough, or if you're doing bards, I just don't see any use case for Disguise Self at all. Maybe it's just how I play the game. Expeditious Retreat. Another one, I'd probably say it's situational. Gain dash immediately as a bonus action on each of your turns until the spell ends. Okay, so that's pretty useful. That's definitely situational. I never used it at all, but it could be quite useful for a few different situations. So yeah, it could be useful. Okay, so False Life. So it's kind of like a healing spell for necromancers, or like just as a wizard. Okay, so it gives you 7 temporary hit points at level 1. You can upcast it, and for each level you get 5 extra temporary hit points. The fact that they're temporary, that's kind of not ideal. I mean, it's not necessarily healing, you're just giving yourself more health. I don't know if it's probably situational. I never used it. I don't think I could probably justify using that spell, to be honest, but probably situational. Featherfall. I'd probably say this is situational as well. Featherfall is really handy, obviously, just for traversing the map. If you need to jump down and not take damage with the whole party, really useful. There's items that you get in the game that allow you to get this in Act 1. So probably as a wizard, I would never assign it or like keep it in my readied spells. But overall, as a spell that wizards have access to, it is situational. Find Familiar. So Find Familiar, I would put that as a C, situational. Mainly because like early game, they're good. The familiars are useful. They can do a little bit of extra damage, and they're quite helpful having an extra player, member of your party. But they fall off really quickly towards the mid game. So situationally useful, early game, great for having a bit of extra help on the battlefield. Not great for the mid to end game. Fog Cloud. So Fog Cloud, I never use this to its best advantage. I know a lot of people have a lot of different use cases for Fog Cloud and how you can use it. So I would say it's situational personally. So obviously creates a 3-meter radius Fog Cloud, which gives everyone a disadvantage on attack rolls within it, or visibility. Okay, Grease. Grease is fantastic, especially early game. As an early game spell, so basically creates a 10-meter radius of grease on the ground. Obviously, grease is slippery, so if anyone's on it, they have to traverse it, they have to roll a dexterity check, and if they fail it, they slip over. Really useful early game because enemies will always try to walk through it. Not always, but like when they do, they slip on it and it's great. And then you can also cast Fireball or anything fire damage and ignite it and do extra damage. So super useful. Has a lot of great uses. Ice Knife. Ugh, I have a thing against Ice Knife. I don't know what it is, but I've never had success with Ice Knife. It basically always underperforms for me. It's a level 1 spell slot, and every time I use it, I'm just like, meh. I don't get the satisfaction out of it. I just didn't enjoy it using it at all. Okay, Enhanced Sleep. Enhanced Sleep, definitely. I rarely used it. Probably could justify putting it into situational, but like the only time I've ever really used it was like Lae'zel when she has it as a Githyanki skill to get extra jumping. I never really used it outside of that, so maybe it can go into D. Okay, Long Strider, extremely useful. So I used Long Strider wrong for so long in my playthrough, and despite everyone in the comment section telling me how I was using it wrong, it took me a long time to figure it out. And once I figured it out how useful it was, really good. I mean, so basically Long Strider you can cast for free outside of combat, doesn't use any spell slots. You can even upcast it so you can use it on everybody without using a spell slot, and it gives them extra movement speed. You get that for free. You just do it at the start of every long rest, and away you go. So super useful. Pretty much as soon as you get access to it, just keep using it. Mage Armor, extremely useful. Increases your armor class by what number again? So it increases the casters or the person that targets armor class to 13 plus the dexterity modifier. As a wizard, you kind of need the spell. This is like another one that you buff yourself with. It lasts until long rest. Use it at the start of every long rest because, yeah, you'll need it. And it's only worth 1 spell slot. It doesn't have any advantage from upcasting. Just use it. Magic Missile overperforms. Every wizard should have a Magic Missile. It's fantastic. And if you're using the Lightning build, it's also amazing. Basically, it casts 3 plus whatever upcast level it is, 2 of darts of damage, and it always hits. It's really good for disrupting the enemy if they're concentrating on a spell, because it's always going to hit. If they're around a corner or if they're not in range, like on direct line of sight for any of the other spells, always going to hit. Fantastic spell for doing damage and consistent damage. I love it. Does fall off a little bit towards the end of the game, but a really great spell overall. Protection from good and evil. So basically this spell gives you protection from a few different types of enemies. What was it? So it's aberrations, celestials, elementals, fae, fiends, and undead. So obviously undead is useful. I just didn't get much, I never thought about the spell when I was fighting undead or when you're fighting fae, which the only fae you fight really is Auntie Ethel that I'm aware of, and elementals. But like nothing in my mind goes, oh, I'm fighting an undead. I better cast protection from evil and good. So I'm not too fussed by that spell. Okay, Ray of Sickness, another one that I never really used at all. I don't have any use cases where I've used it. Does poison damage. I don't know. I don't know what it is about these spells. I just I never really found I could get the status effect to hit with these spells, so I never really bothered using them too much. I always just go for the basic damage dealers. Shield. Shield is a good one. I never actually used it on my wizards at all. I just used mage armor instead and tanked all the damage. They never really had much of a problem, but it is handy, especially if you've got the one wizard in your party. Because I had multiple wizards and I want to make sure I held onto my spell slots, I didn't want to use shield because obviously it uses a spell slot every time you get attacked. And so because I had a whole party of wizards, they're going to be getting attacked a lot. So I didn't want to use up all my spells fighting using shield. But if you're the one wizard out of 4, having shield is probably helpful because you're not always going to be the target. So it's a good one to have. Definitely in the great uses. Sleep is a tricky one. So this one obviously takes a few enemies out of the battlefield. They've got to be up to a certain number of health, so it's only really good against the weaker enemies. And in that case, I would still probably prefer to, take them out in other means. So I'll probably say that's situational. Tasha's Hideous Laughter. I tried using it once and it didn't work. And I wrote it off from there because I'm like, well, I could have just damaged them instead, because it's another one where you've got the percentage hit rate you know, is it worth missing with that spell when I could have just tried to hit them with something else and missed with that, or potentially done damage? Because especially in like this case of sleep, if you hit them and they wake up, well, you've wasted your opportunity. So there's a lot of variables in those spells to make them not worth using. Thunder Wave, extremely useful. Love this spell, especially early game. So later game it gets a lot harder because everything doesn't get knocked back as easy. But earlier game, when you're fighting goblins and like lots of the human enemies where they're easily knocked off edges and cliffs and they die from the falling damage, it's a goated spell overall. Like that's a spell you should always have early game, because there's a lot of situations where you can do that. You can knock them off edges, knock them away from you as a wizard, and it also does, you know, even if it misses, it still does half the damage, half the damage. So overall, a great spell for a wizard to have. You probably won't need to use it later game. Witch Bolt. I never used Witch Bolt too much. I preferred other spells over Witch Bolt, but it's another great one because you cast it once and you can recast it to keep doing damage. Fantastic because it does lightning damage, so you can pair that with like Create Water and continue to do some decent damage overall. And obviously, if you do link up with an enemy and you just keep hitting them with the Witch Bolt, it doesn't require any extra spell slots and you keep hitting them with lightning damage. Really good spell overall. I didn't use it too much, but I think it's a great spell. So it can stay in the B. All right, so next up is Blindness. I'm going to put that down to here. Same as everything else. I guess if you're a wizard and you're helping other party members do damage to everything else, it could be helpful. But it's another one where I'd just rather not do the status effect and just do the damage instead. But I see how it could be useful for some people. I just don't use it. Blur. So the problem with Blur is it requires concentration. So I have tried using Blur a few times. And so like you can use it and it increases your armor class, if I remember rightly. Okay, attackers have a disadvantage on attack rolls against you. Well, the problem is if they hit you and they break your concentration, you've wasted a spell slot casting Blur on yourself, and then you're basically right where you left off because they still hit you and you're still taking the damage. So like basically like the thought process of me is, okay, I could cast Blur on myself. That uses one spell slot. I have to then have concentration on that spell, so I can't use any other concentration spells. If they try to hit me, they have a disadvantage. If they hit me anyway, and they break my concentration, I've basically just wasted a spell slot. So for me, Blur is D. Cloud of Daggers, extremely useful, especially early game where you want to create choke points and you want to control the map. Really helpful. I use it heaps early game and even mid game, basically on doorways and stuff like that. If enemies walk through it, you can thunder wave them back into the Cloud of Daggers. Really good. If they start the turn in it, they take damage. If they end the turn, they take damage. Overall, fantastic spell. Crown of Madness, another one that I didn't ever use because it's another one that, you know, causes a status effect where I'd rather do damage. I'm not going to go down that path again, but didn't really use it much. Darkness. Now, I'm going to put Darkness as situational. I never use it to its full capacity, and people called me out for it, and that's okay. It's more of a defensive spell, so basically if anyone in the darkness, you can't shoot into the darkness or out of the darkness because it's dark, you can't see. And so it's really good for defending yourself or within the area. There's probably a lot of other ways you could use it that I didn't use properly, so I would say it's definitely a situational spell. And I know I definitely didn't use it properly. Okay, Dark Vision. I'm going to put that down to rarely useful because most characters or most races have Dark Vision natively. It's only a few that don't. And then you're going to be using a spell slot on yourself to cast Dark Vision to give you maybe advantages in certain places. This probably is what pairs well with Darkness, but I never really used it that much or never even thought to use it. Okay, Detect Thoughts. Now, this is an interesting one. I don't know how Detect Thoughts is used in combat. So basically you only use it while in dialogue, but I'm pretty you don't need to have the spell prepared. Dialogue options always give you the option to use Detect Thoughts without actually needing to have the spell on you. And I don't even know if it uses a spell slot. So I don't even know why it's in this, why it's even a spell you can cast. I don't know. I don't know I actually have no idea how that works. Okay, Enlarge, Reduce. Now, this is probably situational. I never used it because I always had wizards and I didn't really have the need to enlarge my wizards. But if you are a wizard supporting a barbarian or any frontliners, probably useful to enlarge them. You could, I don't know how the reduce works, but maybe you can reduce them to go into small holes and stuff like that. So I'd probably say that's situational. Next up is Flaming Ball. I'm going to put Flaming Ball as situational again. Now, I did have Flaming Ball and I did use it a lot. The problem with Flaming Ball is it's a concentration spell. So you got to cast it. You can't use any other concentration spells. It's pretty slow. It has a pretty small range of movement, so it can't do a huge amount on the battlefield. It's great early game for additional damage and additional body for someone to hit, but overall not the best spell to go for in that kind of situation. But it's a good one to have. A good one to have if you're not sure what else to pick. Hold Person. Now, unlike the other spells, yeah, I'll probably say this is still situational. Unlike these other spells, I actually don't mind Hold Person because it does stop them from doing stuff. It's a lot harder for them to break out of, and if everyone's dealing damage to them, like I've had more success with Hold Person than I've had with all the other spells. Like, unlike with Sleep, I'd actually probably put Sleep down here. Unlike with Sleep, if you hit them while they're still held, you'll just get an advantage on everything you do, and you do max damage to them when they're held. So overall, fantastic spell. Requires concentration, but I have had a lot more success with Hold Person, and I'd probably prefer to use that over any of these other status affecting spells because basically they can't defend themselves against anything you do to them after they've been held. Okay, next up. Oh, this is invisibility. Oh, this is why are they so similar? Okay, so this one here is Minor Illusion. So we're gonna have to go backtrack a little bit. Minor Illusion here is I never used it, but I had people tell me how I should be using it, and so in that case, I'm gonna say it's a situational spell. Invisibility, gonna put it in the same thing. We've already gone through invisibility. Next on the agenda, Magic Weapon. I don't know how this weapon works. Okay, so infuse a weapon with arcane energy. The weapon becomes magical, receiving a +1 bonus to attack rolls and damage rolls. So that could be situational if you're a wizard, obviously supporting other players or other classes. Could be useful if you're building like a support style wizard. Personally, for my playthrough, everyone was just damage dealers, so I didn't really worry too much about that, but probably situation. Mel's Acid Arrow, hated it. I tried using it a few times and it just didn't hit. Didn't do what I wanted it to do. Like level 2 spell slot, there's so many other spells I'd prefer to cast than Mel's Magic Arrow. Mirror Image, I'm going to say that's situational. So Mirror Image can be helpful as a defensive spell. Obviously increases your armor. Creates 3 illusionary duplicates of yourself to distract enemies. Each duplicate increases your armor class by 3. Yeah, so that's a really good defensive spell. And every time you hit, you lose one of the Mirror Images. Really good to cast earlier in the fight. I don't think I used it in my wizard run, but I'm using it on my druid run now. With one of my characters, and I'm finding it super useful. So yeah, I'm going to put that as a C, situational. Misty Step. I'm going to say that's a B for great uses, especially when you pair that with like other spells like Thunder Wave. Like you Misty Step behind an enemy or while they're on a ledge and you Thunder Wave them off. Fantastic use case. Really good for just getting around the map and finding different angles and opportunities for attack. Fantastic spell. Always worth having. There's plenty of equipment in the game that give you Misty Step for free, so I generally just get them instead of having it as a wizard spell, but overall Misty Step is like a must-have. Next up, Phantasmal Force. Now I actually never used this spell, but I can see how it could be useful. It might be better, but I'm going to put that as a C, just simply because I didn't use it, but I kind of wish I did because it sounds interesting. What does it do? It does it's a level 2 illusion spell, allows spellcasters to flood a target creature's mind with an illusion of the last thing that attacked it, dealing 1d6 psychic damage per turn. So it sounds interesting. There seems to be a little bit more involved in it than that, so I'm going to put that as a C just because it has a bit of an interesting element to it. Ray of Enfeeblement, another one that I just couldn't be bothered casting. I'd rather do damage. Scorching Ray, definitely a B. Plenty of great uses for Scorching Ray. Being able to attack multiple different targets is great. Doing fire damage is fantastic, or just pummeling the one enemy with 3 hits of damage. It's a go-to spell. Probably would say that's even an A. Extremely useful spell. I would go to that one all the time as like a main damage dealer until you get to like level 3 wizard spells. Shatter. Oh, I would actually say Shatter early game overperforms, mainly because it's like your first AoE spell that you can cast and like do group damage, and it's a really good way of taking out multiple enemies, especially like goblins. The amount of goblins I've killed with Shatter, really good. So I'd probably say Shatter overperforms for the like lower level. You know, I'd probably put Thunderwave up there too. Oh. No, I'll leave Thunderwave down because it does let you down sometimes where you try to Thunderwave an enemy and it doesn't work. So, but Shatter, like just being your first AoE spell, it's kind of a must-have as a wizard because it allows you to take out multiple enemies at once. Web, great uses. Not as effective as Grease, I would say. Actually, you can probably tier these as well if you wanted to. So Web is good because, like I would say, let's put Web there. So Web is fantastic. Obviously, another AoE control spell. You put it down, enemies could get stuck in the web and they're slowed walking through it. It also burns when enemies are in it. So if they're in the area of the web and it catches on fire, they take burning damage from that as well. So Web is a great one. Almost would say it's situational, but I would prefer Grease because slipping and them being prone is just a bit better effect than being stuck. Animate Dead. This one is extremely useful. Having an extra enemy or extra teammate on your team, an extra body to take damage and an extra body to dish damage is fantastic. So I prefer the Skeleton Archer over the zombie, although the zombie being able to use Crawling Gnaw is pretty good, but overall extremely useful, especially if you're a wizard, especially if you're a necromancer. It's a great spell to have. Just having the extra manpower on a battlefield is super useful, especially early game. Okay, so this is a older one here. So there's apparently Shadow Blade in this list here. So I think Shadow Blade must have come in from a patch that's after this list was made, by the looks of it. So I don't know much about Shadow Blade, to be honest. I unfortunately did my wizard playthrough before patch 8, if that's where it came in, but I'm not too sure. Bestow Curse. So another good one for debuffing. I never really used it that much. Well, actually, I never used it. Not the same reason as every other thing, just the disadvantage, not really worth it in my eyes. Sleet Storm, situational. So Sleet Storm is really good for, obviously, you cast it down, creates an icy surface, and obviously it breaks the concentration of anyone inside it. I had it, but I never used it because I just didn't really see much use cases for it. The problem with a whole party of wizards is that everyone's a wizard. And everyone's got concentration spell, and usually the fight gets brought to you. So if you cast Sleet Storm, you can't concentrate it either, and you're on the ice. So I couldn't, not that I didn't want to use it, I just didn't have very many opportunities to use it, but I can see how it is useful in certain situations, especially on a different party. So I'll put it as a situationally useful spell. Next up is Fear. I never used Fear. You get Fear for free from the pendant, which is handy, I guess. That's probably the only time I did use it. I never thought I would waste a spell slot on Fear. I probably should start putting them in order here. So I'm gonna put Fear like maybe here. Feign Death. Never used Feign Death. I don't see the point of it. Like, I guess if you're trying to get out of combat, if you're in a situation where you're losing and you want to get out without dying, Feign Death maybe, but I never had much use for it. Fireball overperforms. Fireball is just a must as a wizard. Like, it basically, the reason why I prefer Fireball over Shatter is simply because it's obviously just a better AoE damage spell. It's a go-to. You have to always be using it. If you're not doing anything else, just throw a fireball to do damage to enemies. It's just fantastic, great AoE spell. Don't really need to go into it more than that. Fly, situational. As a wizard, you probably don't need to, like, it casts a spell, you can only use it on yourself, so unless you're trying to get into a better advantage position as a wizard, or you're trying to get an item, that was the only time I ever would cast Fly on myself. Otherwise, I'd have Misty Step to do the same job. Gaseous Form, same reason as Fly, like handy, but probably not that good overall because you can't do much else once you've cast it on yourself. Glyph of Warding. So I know a lot of people like Glyph of Warding. Everyone was telling me I should be using it more. My problem with Glyph of Warding is, like, you put it on the ground and then, like, they walk through it and they get trapped, but they just always walk around it anyway. It's the same other reason as other kind of AoE spells, but I found it a lot harder to use it as a trap. I know I just never. Maybe I just didn't take full advantage of it. Haste. Haste, I'm going to say, is situationally useful. So I tried using haste with my wizards, and it suffered from the same thing as blur. So haste obviously gives you an extra action in your turn. The problem with haste, though, is it's a concentration spell, and if you're casting it on yourself and you get hit, you break your concentration, and then you're no longer hasted, and then you're also actually slowed for the next turn. So it has a disadvantage there. Also, I always would accidentally use a concentration spell over the top of it and cancel it and break my concentration, and then like pretty much prevent me from being able to do anything for the rest of that turn. So it was very situational. I used it only a handful of times because I quickly found it wasn't worth the extra turn, because it eventually ran out too. So unless you're pumping out like fireballs all the time, you're not doing anything else, that's the only time it was actually useful. Hypnotic Pattern, never used it. Don't know why I'd waste a turn and a spell slot on it. But anyway. Protection from energy. So this is situational. There are definitely fights where I use protection from energy, especially fight against, I can't remember his name, but the dragon, the undead dragon, who does lots of lightning damage. If you use that on yourself with lightning, it actually helped me survive that fight. So very situational, very situational spell to use, because in most other cases, nothing else does a significant amount of elemental damage that you would want to protect yourself from. So I would say it's probably only good for like a couple of fights. Remove Curse, situational. There's like one curse that bothers me in every playthrough from opening that book. I can't remember what it's called, and you need it for that. You use a spell scroll if you've got it, but that's the only time I've ever really made use of Dispel Curse. So in that case, I'd say it's situational. Oh, is that? I've gotten Sleet Storm and Counterspell the wrong mixed up. My goodness gracious. Okay, Counterspell. I'm gonna put Counterspell up as great because it does come in handy in certain fights where you're getting barraged by spell users. So yeah, Counterspell. Sleet Storm back into situational. So yeah, Counterspell is a great one to have as a wizard. Basically allows you to, stop a spell from being cast on you. So especially against like Balthazar is a really good use case for Counterspell, where he tries to use Cloud Kill on you, and which is really devastating sometimes. Counterspell can just stop that from happening. So really good. Oh yeah, Stinking Cloud. Never used it. Don't know how I could have used it. It basically creates a gas of nauseating. It prevents creatures from taking actions, which could be helpful. I mean, when the undead, the ghouls use this in the area outside of the temple, it is a painful, but I still don't think I would get that much use out of it if I was to have it active. Vampiric Touch. I didn't use this to its full capacity. I actually only realized how good this was until late game, because it can be cast once, it requires concentration, it can keep recasting it, which is useful. The only problem is you have to be up close and personal, which as a wizard, you don't really want to do. So, great spell situationally for recovering health and doing a bit of damage and being able to recast it, but you don't really want to be up close and personal, so that's where its disadvantage is. Okay, next up, we've got Confusion. So Confusion, same as all the others, I just couldn't be bothered using it. Alright, Elemental, Minor Elemental, extremely useful. I'm going to put this up next behind the skeleton. So it allows you to summon an Aza, which is like a little fire elemental guy. Really good for tanking damage. The only problem is he's very immobile, so if he spends most of his time, especially late game, trying to catch up to everyone and do damage. Overall, though, really good for an extra body on the field, doing additional damage. Overall, yeah, Minor Elemental, so you've got the Aza, you can summon 2 Mud Methods or 2 Ice Methods. The Methods are the way to go. They're extremely mobile, they can fly around the map. The Ice Methods, they can use an Ice Chromatic Orb, which does ice damage and creates a little ice patch on the ground, super useful. They also have Claw attacks and an Ice Breath attack. So creating ice on the battlefield, always devastating for the enemy because they always slip. So super helpful. Them being 2 of them is great. And the Mud Methods, they basically can fling mud, which does damage, and they can do a mud spray, which basically gives the enemy disadvantage on attack or defense rolls. So Mud Methods are really handy in certain cases, and Ice Methods are good in certain cases. They do fall off pretty hard late game, and they can be problematic. I ran into an issue where I had like everyone had summoned ice methods and mud methods, and we all got attacked by like an opening attack by the enemy, and they all blew up and killed us because they explode when they die, which is great when they're in the enemy's face, not great when they're all standing next to you. And when you've got 8 of them all around your party and you get hit by, I can't remember what it was, but a big spell, and like all of them blow up, your whole party gets wiped out at the same time. So that's where you can be caught out. But overall, extremely useful, great for having an extra body on the field. Dimensional Door, situational. I didn't use it at all, but is like another way of using Misty Step to, actually no, I did use it. I used it a couple times. Still though, situational, great for just getting around. With Dimensional Door, you can get 2 people to teleport. So I used it in the fight against Grim, I believe. And it was great for just like transporting. I needed to get someone away from Grim on the other side of the map and heal them at the same time. So really helpful in that situation. Okay, greater invisibility. So I don't know what is great about it. So it's a more resilient form of invisibility. I don't know if I see the advantage with invisibility. Attacks against it have a disadvantage, and attacks with advantage. Okay, so probably just a better chance at surviving attacks and not becoming visible if they are attacked by an AoE spell. I'm guessing that's how it reads. I'm going to put that as situational. Same thing as a wizard, you probably don't need to use it too much unless you're casting it on someone else. Ice Storm. This is a overperformer. I'd probably say that this is better than Fireball. Ice Storm is fantastic. If the enemies are wet, they take additional, they take double damage. It also creates an icy surface. So not only are you doing massive damage to a massive area to everyone inside of it, but they're also on an icy surface. So if they try to run away or they try to get closer to you, they're probably going to slip on that too, and you can double down the damage on them. So always, create water on them first, use Ice Storm. Great way to open up the fight because they generally will slip trying to get to you. Fantastic spell. Always got to have that one. Polymorph, never used it that much. Stone Skin as a wizard, probably situational. Probably good if you're supporting other people and you want to give them additional defenses. I never use it on myself, even though I had an Abjuration Wizard, and that was purely because the concentration aspect of it. Same thing as all the other concentration spells with self-defense spells, is if you get hit, so like, you cast it on yourself, right, to give yourself additional protection, but if you get hit and your concentration breaks, you've just wasted the spell slot, because you've still taken the damage anyway. So, not a spell I would always lean to. Flame Wall. This one is extremely useful, really good for blocking off paths, really good for controlling the map, and obviously doing additional damage to enemies when they decide to just walk through it. Really good spell overall. I would say that this is up here. Some people mentioned that I should have had this in my top 10. The only reason I don't put it in my top 10 is because it is quite situational. So although it is extremely useful, not every battlefield just can use a firewall, and in some cases, like especially if you have allies who want to get past it, it can get in your way too. So it really comes down to the battlefield that you're fighting on. Cloud Kill. I'm going to put this one as a B for great uses. So it does really well at like AoE and control, doing control damage to enemies in the space. The only problem I have with it is it just kind of limits your ability to move around with the Cloud Kill. So especially with my situation where I had a full party of wizards, the enemy like to get into your face. So when they're in your face and you cast Cloud Kill, obviously you're going to be hurting yourself. So really only good for initiating combat when they're, you cast it where they are standing, or if there's a way you can keep them in one spot. But once they've kind of moved away or moved close to you, you can't really cast it anymore because you'll be hitting yourself. So not ideal in most situations, only really in certain situations, but overall a good damage dealer. So I'm just kind of looking through this list, and I can see that we're missing Odaluk's Resilient Sphere. And for that spell, I would put it as a C, situational, purely just because it kind of really depends on what you're trying to protect or who you're trying to protect, because whoever you cast that on, they can't do anything. They can't attack. It's really just a good defensive spell. Okay, we're on to level 5 spells. So first up is Cone of Cold. Cone of Cold is extremely useful. Actually, I'm going to say it's great uses. I didn't use it that much. It's a spell that's great when you're up close and personal, doing really good ice damage. But the problem being is you have to be up close and personal, which is something you don't really want to be as a wizard. But if you get them wet, it's a great damage dealing spell. Okay, Conjure Elemental, fantastic spell, extremely useful. Put that right up the top here. Actually, no, you know what? I'll say, oh, yes, this is an overperformer. If you're a wizard, use this every single time, and essentially upcast it once you can. So at first, when you first get it, you can summon normal elementals, which can have extremely high mobility. They can move around the map super easily. They can fly, they can teleport, they have a AoE spell, and they have a long-ranged attack. Very versatile, lots of health, and they add an additional body onto the battlefield. Fantastic. And then when you get to level 11, you can summon a Myrmidon, which is basically a level up from that. So they have a buff, they can travel around the map. Just overall, the Myrmidons are fantastic and really good ally to have on your side, because they just output so much damage. Dominate Person, I never really used this that much, to be honest, so I'm just going to put that. Dominate Person, didn't really use it, so I'm going to leave that as rarely useful. Same thing, I would rather just do damage. Hold Monster, I put that in the same, as well as Planar Binding. Problem with Planar Binding is it only works on demons. And, well, so what's take control of Celestial Elemental, Fey, or Fiend. So it's very situational in that instance. So you'd have to be lucky to have it on you when you go into those fights. And there's only like a handful of fights where it's actually useful. So not really a good spell. Seeming, I don't think I could ever make use of that spell. Telekinesis, probably say it's situational. The ability to throw people around into different situations is good. Probably only really worth having if you have to have the item, I can't remember what it is, that allows you to cast it. Otherwise, not too fussed about it. Wall of Stone, I'm going to say situational. So Wall of Stone is good for like controlling the battlefield, but it's not like Firewall where it's doing damage. I think Wall of Stone can do damage when you initially cast it, but apart from that, it's not a huge, doesn't have a huge advantage on the battlefield. So I had it, but I never really used it because I just didn't think it was that impactful in the battlefield. I feel like we're missing a few spells here. Like Knock should be on here. Knock would be a bloody S tier spell for sure. Arcane Gate. So this allows you to create a gate where you can teleport between two areas. I never used it. I had it, and I was always looking for a way I could use it, but I never made use of it. But I'm going to say it's situational. I'm going to put it along with the traversal spells here. Okay, Globe of Invulnerability. I'm going to put that as an S tier. Fantastic spell. Actually, I'm going to put it as extremely useful, mainly because I loved using Globe of Invulnerability. The build I had for that, it was fantastic. Basically, I'd cast that on myself, cast Mind Sanctuary within the globe, and pretty much anyone standing inside of it was like immune to it taking any damage, and they could just cast as many spells as they want. It was fantastic. Really good. I would probably say it does overperform. Now I'm going to put it as extremely useful, because it's not something you could use in every single fight, because it does limit your mobility. So if you're getting attacked by multiple people and you're surrounded, great, but you can't move around much once you've cast it. So I'm going to say it's extremely useful. Chain Lightning. Overperformed. Extremely useful, sorry. Mainly, I'd say it overperforms on damage, especially if the enemies are wet. But the reason I'll put it as extremely useful is like it's limited to how many spell slots you can have. You can cast. So that I'll probably put it. That's probably a fair place for it. Circle of Death, same kind of situation. It can go here. Another good one for damage. The only problem with Circle of Death is that same as all the other spells, like Cloud Kill, is that it hits anything in the circle. So when all the enemies get into your space, as they do, you can't cast it because you're going to hit your allies too. So not as useful in that situation, and it doesn't only really have that one effect of doing damage. Summon Undead. So Create Undead, I should say. Create Undead, I actually didn't like it that much. I'm going to put it here because it does create an additional helper. Actually, no, I'm going to put it down as situational. So create undead or summon undead, animate dead, sorry, is great because early game you can cast it, you can create a skeleton or a zombie. The skeleton's great because it's a ranged attack, right? You can upcast it. I didn't mention this before. You can upcast it to create ghouls and they can fly. Really handy because they're mobile and you can do quite a bit of extra damage, and overall fantastic spell for earlier in the game. Create undead, you can only create a mummy. The mummy has like okay health, but extremely limited in movement. So if you're like a wizard using Misty Step, fucking getting around all the battlefield, it's got to like follow along behind them, and it just doesn't have the same impact as a Myrmidon. Like if you could choose between something in a mummy and a Myrmidon, I'd summon a Myrmidon because it can teleport, it can fly, and it can have multiple attacks. Like the mummy, I think it does have multi-attack, but like I was so underwhelmed by how good the mummy was. All right, so Disintegrates. Love the spell. Consistent damage. I'm gonna put that as an S tier because like, boo, like it was always a great spell to do. What's it do? Like it does, yeah, 50 to 100 damage. Like good consistent damage. It's just a really good spell. And then once you hit them and they disappear, like it's a cool spell. So yeah, I'm gonna put that up there. I feel like it's unfair putting it above Chain Lightning because Chain Lightning kind of does a good amount of damage to multiple enemies, but Disintegrate, fantastic. Eye Bite, never used it. Flesh to Stone, another one I never used. Odaluk's Freezing Sphere, I did have it on my Ice Mage, who was Shadowheart. I didn't really have much use for it. I'd probably say it's situational, because you only have a limited amount of level 6 spell slots, and so I don't know if it's worth using over like Chain Lightning or Disintegrate. So I'd probably sit that as a C. Otto's Irresistible Dance, another one, especially like, you know, it's a level 6 spell slot. I would rather cast Disintegrate or summon a Myrmidon or cast Chain Lightning than use Otoluk's Irresistible Dance. Sunbeam, fantastic spell, does a lot of damage in a straight line, and then it's a concentration spell, so you can cast it again. Really good, really useful. So definitely up here in the A tier. Wall of Ice. So Wall of Ice is good. I had it but never used it. See, the same thing again. It's a level 6 spell slot, limited to like what kind of battlefields you're in. End game, that you've got even less. Like pretty much, you know, you get this at level 11. There's not many battlefields left where you can make use of this. It does damage, which is great, but like you're using a level 6 spell slot. So like, same again, would you rather cast this or Disintegrate to get that guaranteed damage, when you could probably cast Wall of Fire and have the same effect? So yeah, it's very situational. I'll probably, yeah, put this down here as a situational spell. Slow, probably put this here as situational. No, actually no. I'm gonna put that at the top here, only because I only ever use slow when I use Black Hole, and that wasn't even the actual spell. So yeah, no. Garyngoth. So Garyngoth, you can use Banishment on her and it gets her out of the fight. So it could be useful in certain situations like that, where they're just completely removed. Like there's no other way they can be affected or anything like that. So they will obviously come back. I would probably say it's a situational. And last but not least, I don't know why it's here, is Evard's Black Tentacles. So this one I'm going to put as great uses. Really good for creating difficult terrain, sticking enemies in one place, and creating a good AoE. It's also unaffected by other things, so you can cast Fireball on the enemies and the Evard's Tentacles don't get burnt. So really good control spell for the battlefield. Yeah, that's a really good one. And that's all of them. Now, there are a few spells that were missing from this. I know this has been a much longer video than I expected it would be. Let me know what you guys think of this list here. I'm going to take a screenshot of it and I'll post it up on my post so you guys can see what the list is. And I want you guys to let me know how wrong I am, or if I am kind of on the mark with a lot of these things. Let me know if I'm using any of these spells in D tier, or how you can use them better if I'm using them wrong. Same with C tier. Yeah, I'd be interested to hear what you guys think. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this style of video, or this type of video. I know it's quite a different one, but if you have, give the video a thumbs up. And if you want to see more content like this from me, give the video a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. Anyway, guys, I'll catch you next time.